Hello and welcome to the third part of the zombie shooter tutorial series. Today we will be more theoretical, look into interfaces and to inheritance. Let's get right into it. So for interfaces you could say that they're sort of functionality without an implementation. So what that means is that we can make, for example, a damageable interface, which will allow us to create a function. For example, void damage with int as an argument, which will be the damage. And we can use that to damage different objects around us. So let's say, for example, that we have the player. The player we want to damage. And we also have the zombie. We also want to damage that with a specific amount. Because maybe we have different zombies with different amount of health. And we, for example, also have a crate object. And the crate will just be a thing like in Zelda, where you have a crate or a pot that you have to damage, and then a pickup will appear out of it. This will allow us to just easily write these implementations and access that implementation. Let's just go into code and see how it actually works in code. Okay, so here we are in the character, and there are a few things that we need. We talked about health, so let's first create a serialized field and a private integer for the max health that we have on a character. And we also create one for just health, which will be the current health that we have on our character. We also write a wake, which will make the health equal to the max health, so that we know that's aligned properly. It has to be protected because we have to override it in our zombie editor player, because we already have that function there. We'll later on go a bit more into what inheritance actually is, because it's something that we didn't really talk about beforehand. As you can see, we are doing here overriding it. We do protected override void awake, which will allow us to override certain elements of it. Yes, and we do the base.awake, which will call the base function of that. So that's the function that we have in the character, which is applying is making the health equal to the max health. Okay, with that out of the way, we will create a new script for the iDamageable. So we create an interface. If we search for that here, we can find it, double click it, and we have an interface. We will rename it to iDamageable. Yes. Let's change the name. I will automatically change the name. We don't need all these. We don't need all these usings here, because we only need system. And I think we don't even need that, but let's just keep it there for just in case. We make this public so that we can access this interface everywhere, and we add this loose implementation that we talked about. So this loose function without implementation. Void damage with an int damageable, int damage. Now we go to character, and we can add this interface here. It will say, there's something wrong. The red line. We have to implement the function that we declared beforehand. So we do public void damage, as that's the name of the damage. It has to be the same name and the same argument in there. Now we have this. We can immediately say that we do the mHealth. mHealth minus equals a damage. And we can destroy it here. So if we say if health is smaller than 0, then we know we don't have any health left, so we can destroy this object. So destroy and then game object, so we can destroy this. But now we have to go to the bullet and change this a bit around, because we were immediately destroying it. So we can remove that. And here we can say a other dot get game object. And then we do iDamageable, so that we know for sure that we have this damageable component attached to our game object. If that's not equal to null, then we know that's there. And then we can call the function on it, damage, and we can add a value there. Let's just add a serialized field and make it a private int and damage. This will allow us to change the damage later on if we so require. We'll fill it in there, and that should be actually it for now, for our script at least. So let's go back to Unity. Yes, compiles. We have a bit of an issue here because, as you can see, the collider is overlapping with the place where we spawn. So if the bullet spawns, we will damage the player now, which we don't want. So if we drag it out a bit like this, let's see. Yes, so you can see that we have the max health here and the normal health. We can see this because I changed the state of this to debug. Normally it's to normal. If you right click the debug, you can see, or normal, you can see that you can change it. I like to have the debug so that I can see the private values that we have in the editor. So yeah, let's just try it out. Let's press play and see, oh, it changes to 10 HP. And if we shoot, -5. And if we shoot again, it's 0. So yeah, we made a small mistake, I guess. So let's get back to the script and fix that small mistake. So we did smaller than, it should be smaller or equal to 0, which will destroy the game object immediately. So yeah, that's it for this interface implementation. I hope you understood a bit. If you don't, then please feel free to ask a question about it, if you have one. Okay, let's also add a crate, as we talked about that when we drew it out a bit, to make it more clear how we can actually use these interfaces. Let's put it to normal so we can see the Sprite Editor. Inside the Sprite Editor, we can change the sprite sheet a bit. So yeah, we will slice out this part of the sprite sheet because that looks like a crate. Change the name of that sprite to crate so that we can easily find it. And then we apply it, and now we have the crate. Okay, cool. I'll drag it up a bit so that it's not on top of the player. And we can add a box to decollider. Cool. We don't need it to be triggered. By using it, we can also just walk up against it, which is nice because then sort of blocks the player and as well the zombie. We can add a script, call it create, and we drag it on top of it. Yeah, as you've seen, we also disabled the gravity scale because we don't use gravity. In the script, we will remove all of this stuff, so we don't need it. We can add the implementation of the interface very quickly, and then implement interface. So that it will automatically add the implementation there. Here we'll add a serialized field for the M health, which should be equal to, well, let's put it to 10. So 2 shots will kill the crate. Private int, oh yeah, that's it. We can do here the same as we did in the player, or in the character itself, I mean. Do it minus health, and if this is smaller or equal to 0, we know, oh, the crate should be destroyed now. Then we just destroy the game object. We could keep it like this, but I think it would be nice if we at least have some sort of implementation right there if we want to spawn a pickup. So we do private void spawn pickup, yes, and we can do a debug.log here, and we log spawn a pickup. And we can call this function here, which should already function. Well, it will only print this log, of course. So yeah, and now we have easily added this this damage component to it. So 2 shots instead. As you can see in the bottom, we have this print there, spawn a pickup, which is always nice. So yeah, that should be it. Okay, so we skipped something which is pretty important, and that was inheritance. We talked about it a little bit in the first episode when we implemented it, but it's I think better to just draw it out here as well, as we are, well, we will probably use it more often in the future. So yeah, let's get started. So yeah, so we have a zombie and a player character. Let's emphasize on the character part. So we have this character object, which we use to have like the health component now, so the health variable, which we both use actually in both the zombie and in the player in the future when we implement damaging the player. And we also have this move function, which we use already in both of the zombie and the player to move them around. But the implementation of this function, it's only in the character. So why we do this is because we don't want to duplicate our code all over our code base. And as the zombie and the player are sort of the same in a way, maybe the way that they move or the input that they receive is different, because the zombie will have input dependent on the target that he has and its own location, and the player on the input that you provided. But in general, it's the same. But this awake thing that we just did now, right? We override it in the player and both in the zombie, because they have different things that they do. The player sets the camera because it needs it for the mouse position, and the zombie has find target because it needs it for finding the player and the direction it has to move towards. But we also use it in the character now to set the health equal to the max health. This is why we use an override while also calling the base component, which is character, and calling the awake on the base, which will use like the same function as character, but will add functionality to it because it's of the type zombie. So this is why we use that. So yeah, I hope that makes a bit of sense. Probably not, because it's quite a hard subject and it's easier to see how it works than to actually talk about how it works in theory. But yeah, that should be at least give a bit more clarification why we use it. So yeah, but we at least have some fun gameplay now with the use of interfaces, which I think is pretty nice, because it's quite a good subject to have, to understand at least. So let's talk a bit about zombie, on how we are going to attack, because I personally don't have cool zombie attack animations, so we will do something a bit simple maybe. We will sort of charge the zombie when it's in attack range towards the player object, and bounce the player a bit off so that there's a bit of a knockback when it gets hit. And then we can just use the Damageable interface on the character of the player to damage the player component, to the player actor. So and we will also possibly add potions or health packs, and we can just spawn them from the crates when we destroy them, so that we have some implementation there, which would be nice, to heal the character when it gets hit by the zombie. So yeah, that will be something that we will do in the next episode. So I hope that is interesting to you. And yeah, I hope then to see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye.